I'm Reverend Sue Browning, and welcome to our service today. It's a service with the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton's congregation as we kick off our stewardship campaign, as we think about commitment together. And as is familiar to our congregation, we're a congregation who begins in song, and we begin today with Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the land, giving life the shape of justice, roots of me lost, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So welcome to our service with our clocks all adjusted. Some of them adjust in our cars, some of them we still need to fiddle around with. Today's going to be a fun service, and it's a service that's created with a purpose. It's a service to remind us of the blessings of the many who have come before, who have preserved the flame for this congregation, both literally and figuratively for many years, and to take stock of where we are, to think about where we are going forward. You're going to see a great video with the kids today, and it really struck me that when I started, either most of those kids were infants, babies, or not yet here. So in the course of passing flames along, generations come through and we nurture one another. If you happen to be joining us, if you're a visitor, check us out on our website. You can learn more about the congregation. We'll be happy to sign you up for the newsletter. So wherever you are today, we come together for a time of renewal. We come together, actually the 52nd Sunday after we started doing virtual services, some weary, some with questions, some with some fresh energy. We gather in that light to renew one another. So we come in celebration for those who have come before and in gratitude for everything that has kept the flame burning this past year. I light the chalice in that spirit this morning, in love for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton, for the sharing, for so much that is done in the name and the commitment of love. We light our chalice this morning. Now, to all share in the saying of the covenant of our fellowship. Bill's going to pull that up. It's something we don't do as much during shared services. It's not something familiar to our sister congregation. So take a moment, remember these words. Remember these words that have been shared so many times together in the sanctuary. At the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton, we seek to nurture spiritual and intellectual growth for all ages and to be actively involved in community outreach and service, cherishing diversity and celebrating our oneness with one another, with all humanity. We covenant to support each other in the spirit of compassion, respect, and love. Feels good to hear those words. We now, as a stewardship team, I was working your stewardship team, who I meant to acknowledge during the chalice lighting, and we'll hear from them today, of Jane Terebey, Dick Doughty, Mary Dunlavey, and their honorary team member, Rob Todd. They have put together a campaign around preserving our flame. And at one of our early meetings, Jane said, how about that story, Stone Soup? And so now you're going to hear Stone Soup as interpreted by Liz and our RE children.
Hello, everybody. Today we are going to read the short story called Stone Soup. Some of you may already be familiar with this selection. It is just wonderful. One cold winter's day, many years ago, a weary traveler arrived at a small village. She had been traveling for many days and she was cold and hungry.
At last, I will see friendly faces and have a warm supper. I'd give anything for a bowl of carrot soup. I don't see anybody. I wonder what's wrong.
Then out of a door of one of the cottages came a villager and said, "You best move on. It's been a long, hard winter, and we have no food left. We cannot feed you. We cannot even feed ourselves." The other villagers joined in. "We are poor and hungry too. We cannot offer you food. Be on your way."
You don't have to worry about that. We're having stone soup. There'll be enough for everyone.
"I have never heard of that," said the villagers. "Is it good?"
It's the best soup you'll ever taste. Here, let me start a fire. Oh, let me get my pot. Oh, and of course my spoon. And of course my very special, let me unwrap it, stone soup stone. Mmm. Mmm. Let's see how it tastes. Mmm.
"Is it good?" asked a villager.
Not bad, but it could use some salt. Does anyone have any salt?
Salt? We have salt. Here's the salt.
Mmm. Much better. If we only had some parsley.
Parsley? What's parsley? I'm gonna go see if we have some. I found some parsley in the kitchen. Oh, it's dry parsley.
I don't suppose anyone has any carrots.
Carrots? We have carrots. Here is the carrots.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone have any pepper? Could use a little pepper.
Pepper? Yes, we have pepper.
Before long, all the villagers had remembered bits of food and seasonings to go in the soup. Only one villager had refused to give anything for the meal, saying he had no food in his house. "It smells delicious. Is it ready?" asked the villagers.
Not quite ready yet. No, what it really needs is an onion. Does anyone have an onion?
Have any onions? We don't have onions. Don't we need? Onions? I don't think we have any onions.
No, we have no onions in our house.
Okay, I might have an onion in my house.
Thank you. This made the soup the best. It's delicious. Everyone, eat up.
This is good. This is yummy soup. Tasty.
This is good soup.
Isn't this so delicious? Yeah. I was about to say that. It tastes like heaven.
Everyone at the feast swore that it was the finest soup they had ever tasted. The next morning, the traveler packed up to leave. The villagers asked her to stay longer, but instead the traveler brought out the stone, wrapped in cloth. "This is for you," she said, "but it will only work if you all cook together and if everyone brings something to the feast." The traveler left the village, knowing the villagers had learned that things can be accomplished when everyone works together.
So I want everybody to know that if we were together right now, there would be huge clapping. There would be the excitement of something really well done. So gratitude to Liz, Laura, and all of the children and their families who made sure all those videos get in on time. And it's also a story for deep reflection. The place, not only of places where people held back at different points, but also that it all doesn't work if everybody doesn't pull in and send what they can to make a rich soup. And then there's the joy of eating it together. So thank you very much. We're going to transition now into a time of reflection. We're not going to do individual joys and sorrows today. I invite you to place them in the chat if you'd like. It has been 1 year, actually 1 year ago this weekend, we didn't have church, and then we began our virtual services. It's a time to reflect on that, to consider our chalice, the chalice flame, that single flame right now reflecting so much that we have been through in this past year. I invite us to reflect to music today. What's interesting is a colleague, Reverend Dan Schatz, put out some music that he wrote just this past week in honor of the past year. Our theme is preserving our flame, and by chance, his song is titled Carry the Flame. So I ask us, as we think about the many losses this year, think about those who lost loved ones to COVID, who've struggled with illness, who've had their lives significantly disrupted, who have a new understanding of risk, to take some time as you hear this music and reflect on the past year.
The toughest time you ever knew, the only thing that you could do was carry the flame. Sickness spreading through the land, you held your spirit in your hands. carried the flame. When storms and sorrows gathered round, you raised your head and you stayed your ground. You carried the flame. Through endless days of the hardest living, you kept on loving, kept on giving. You kept on and carried the flame. Carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky. Keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know. Let it glow. Carry the flame. And when the day is done at last, we take on the spark you've passed and carry the flame. From hand to hand we send it on, the kindling hope of a rising dawn. In a song we carry the flame. Carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky. Keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know. Let it glow. Carry the flame. We are nurses, doctors, teachers. We are children, parents, preachers, and we all carry the flame. We are scientists and cargo packers, farmers, singers, grocery stackers, young and old. We carry the flame. Carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky. Keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know. Let it glow. Carry the flame. Let it glow. Carry the flame.
You can see the sun has changed even in the sanctuary now. Let's just take a moment, take stock of the year. Let's take stock of this moment, this time when we're starting to feel some hope, feeling some change. For all that is our lives, we live in gratitude. Fairly ironic that right as we're looking at adaptations and change, we make another change here. So I have the blessing, as we look at how we're committed to our congregation, one of the things, I'm gonna do one, hang on, give me one more second here, just to get a couple books under here. One of the blessings I have is I get to hear in the community how wonderful our congregation is. And sometimes I'm alone and I wish I could share all the accolades that this congregation gets. So today, as we start the stewardship portion of the service, I've asked, you're going to hear from two community members, Rabbi Peter Hyman and Julie Lowe, who bring their greetings as we start our stewardship campaign. So we're going to play each of their videos now.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Peter Hyman, Rabbi at Temple B'nai Israel, and I bring greetings to you not only from myself personally, but from my entire congregation, and we send our best to you as you begin your stewardship campaign. Reverend Browning, Sue, asked me to share the ways I see your congregation, the Unitarian Universalists congregation, impacting and influencing our community. And I do so gladly, with pride, and with deep appreciation for the relationship that has existed between me and Reverend Browning and Temple B'nai Israel and your congregation for many, many years. As you know, our congregations have partnered over the years with shared values and with a commitment toward living out those values. We've stood up together against violence and hatred, bigotry and prejudice. We've helped build the interfaith shelter, and we've supported the need for equity. The UUs are always there. You guys are always there, always. Having a strong UU congregation means my congregation always has a partner. Whether our members are together in the public square speaking out for justice, or when I drive by your building on Route 50 and see you proudly displaying a rainbow flag, or a Move the Monument sign, which is also in the front of Temple B'nai Israel. I know your clear presence and moral voice matters, and matters deeply. As you fund your operations and your passions for the coming year, I wanted you to know, and I want your congregation to know, that you are fundamental, important, not only important, but you are impactful and vital to the balance, well-being, and overall strength and depth of our community. I wish you great success. I know how challenging this kind of endeavor can be, but ultimately, when it is successful, every one of us benefits. With God's richest blessings, I say, go for it. Be well.
Hello, I'm Julie Lowe. I'm the Executive Director of Talbot Interfaith Shelter, affectionately known as TIS. UUFE has been strong supporters of Talbot Interfaith Shelter since the very beginning in 2008, when we started rotating amongst churches in Easton and St. Michael's. You provided a sanctuary inside your sanctuary for homeless people who were struggling with many things in their lives. You opened your arms and your hearts to folks you didn't know, and you made them feel like family. When we bought Easton's Promise in 2014, UUFE continued to support us with volunteer supervisors and providing dinner on the 9th of the month very reliably and very gratefully. We are so thankful for Tom and Todd to be doing what they're doing and organizing such a great team of wonderful congregants from UUFE. I understand you're starting a stewardship program. And this program, I know, will do many, many good things in the community, as you have always done for TIS. I hope that it is a great program and that you open your hearts to other organizations and people who are in need, just like the homeless people we serve at TIS. Thank you so much for all that you do, and keep going strong, UUFE.
We come back to me here. We will make those videos available. I know we had a little trouble playing them so that everybody will have a chance to hear them over the next weeks. The next testimonial you're going to hear is more personal. It's members in the congregation, Liz and Steve Parks, who had a year of challenge, a year right now of joy, and they wanted to express their gratitude and give an example of what it means to be a congregation when someone's struggling.
We haven't given testimonials before about why you should support our fellowship financially, although we've pledged both to UUFE and the UU Fellowship we belonged to on Long Island before moving here nearly 4 years ago. Liz and I don't do so now, just out of gratitude for this fellowship's generous outreach to us, though we are profoundly grateful. We do so because we feel like members of a broader family who came forward without our even asking for help. As many of you may know, Liz received a kidney transplant in late January, made possible by our daughter Rachel's vital organ donation. For a month after both were discharged from the University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore, they recuperated at home here in Easton, but were required to return up to 3 times a week for follow-up treatment. It wasn't just convenient to have home-cooked meals delivered to us. It also kept me from having to shop in supermarkets and risk possible COVID exposure to my vulnerable patients. So UU became extended family. There are too many of you to thank in this short testimonial, but Suzanne Todd spearheaded the large menu of soup to nuts to mac and cheese and ham, not to mention sweets, that we all received. Mostly, we felt fed by love and caring. We all support our literal families. It's what you do. But as UUs, we're also members of a fellowship family that looks out for each other. Please give what you can, pay it forward, and may you never find the need for payback. Just know you won't have to ask.
My daughter and I are doing very well, and I thank everyone.
So we hear from the community, we hear the ways that our congregation did a version of Stone Soup this year. When we think about the Stone Soup story that we heard earlier, we hear at the beginning that the villagers were drained. It had been a long, hard winter. And the traveler, she arrives and she is cold and she is weary. So we did this week have a couple beautiful warm days, and I know it had me wondering, maybe this winter is over. Maybe we can actually see the pandemic winding down in some fashion, that we will return to something that feels more normal, whatever that might mean on the other side of this. As we heard various vaccine progress, as people have come back with their reports, we've had that chance to think maybe it's almost over. And I do offer that that is really hard to grasp. In his speech this past Thursday, President Biden described meeting a woman when he was campaigning last summer, and he asked her, "What do you need most?" He says, she looked me in the eye and she just said, "I want the truth. The truth. Just tell me the truth." And I sense that that's what we all want at this point. We want a story that's not more doom and gloom than needs to be, but we also don't want to overpromise. We don't want to overstretch, but we'd love some clarity. And yet it's hard right now to feel clarity. I think like those villagers in the story, we are cautious right now. A year ago, we were hit hard and we've gone through a year of adaptations. We've done pretty well. And yet it's a time we wonder as we move forward and we think about the next step of commitments, can we trust that our legs are going to be under us as we step forward into new commitments? So this congregation, you're here today, we are here today to make some commitments about the future. And I am confident that we can trust one another. We can know that our legs will be under us. We can trust those legs. And I say that not just making it up and guessing. I say that having watched a year and having been a part of this congregation over the past difficult year. And what I've seen over and over is a spirit of generosity and outreach. We had the option to just let that stone simmer in the pot and wring our hands with all of the uncertainty, to let the fire go out or at least not tend the fire. But that's not what you did. You preserved the flame. It's a flame that has burned in many forms for 60 years, and you kept it not only burning, you kept adding to the fire. You kept putting on more wood and stoking it and giving it care. I'm going to tell 3 examples of some things that happened over this past year, but you should just know these are a sliver. I had to pick 3, but ones that really give us evidence of how, when we work together, the world feels different and looks different. The first story I want to tell is a story that happened really early in the pandemic and early in the shutdown. Take us back, it was a time of confusion and we were trying to figure out, everybody was trying to figure out what needs to be done. Somebody said, we need masks. We need masks as a community. And I want to share for folks that were on the huge email stream, there are probably 30 or 40 people on it, the love that you could feel as this congregation said, how are we going to help one another with masks? Folks on that email stream and in their actions exchanged patterns and hints and encouragement. Some dug out some very dusty sewing machines from what they were telling. And we had some folks that aren't sewers and they were looking for sources of elastic and understanding what Joann's fabrics would do for free patterns. And as our own family and friends' needs were taken care of and folks checked around the congregation wanted to do more. And some of our leaders stepped forward and connected with the leaders in Talbot County and looked at the community needs. Take that story and think about how folks would not have known each other without UUFA. And think about what emerged in both beautiful and functional masks. Another story I want to share has to do with outreach collections. The congregation has a long, long tradition of collecting money every month from a partner and hearing from that partner. And we started wondering, is that going to be possible during the pandemic? It hadn't happened in March, and in April I called Jim Richardson, and I said, hey, could we do an outreach collection? He made calls, other folks made calls, and we figured out a virtual outreach collection and collected $800. We usually collect $400 or $500 in a normal collection. $800 was collected because people just wanted to give. Similarly, Patty Hampshire had an idea of how we could give at Christmas, and all the options to give almost ran out because people wanted to step forward. The final story just to share today is just an example, is this year amongst a pandemic included the horror of the murder of George Floyd. It was a tipping point in decades and decades of violence. And UUFE members shared the opportunities to gather in the public square together, and as they felt safe, they could do that. Folks gave resources, gave money, but then we also used the power of our congregation to learn together. We had Dick Doughty led a service on white privilege. Bozena and Nancy Sawyer took us through and helped us understand more on Black voices and Black leadership. And I worked with Sarah Poley on a service on the Artists for Justice, lifting up the work that Nancy Tankersley had done. We come together in needs, whether we're the salt for the soup, the parsley for the soup, the pepper, our hearts come together time and again to preserve that flame. And when there was that risk of isolation, remember early shutdown, we figured out ways to offer services. For 52 weeks in a row, we have figured some way to gather. Music has fed our souls. Many here have helped offer music, have given ideas. Our kids have gathered, and we've shared joys and sorrows. It's what a healthy congregation does. And those fires needed to be tended over and over. I want to go back now way to the beginning of that story that Liz told us, the stone soup story. The place where the traveler comes and shares the needs. Somebody shows up at a door. It could be a virtual or another door. You don't know the next person who's going to have needs. Many on this call are new to our congregation or newer. And the traveler had an idea. How about making some soup from a stone? But what's the next thing that happens in that story? Liz gets a pot. She gets a large, sturdy pot, ready for the stone in the water, a pot that could hold the heat. The pot was ready for the possibilities. And as I've thought of it, I think that pot is a way to think of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton. We are a container. We're an organization. We have structures, we have boards, we have staff, we have ministers. We're here ready to hold possibilities. Your board does that each month when it meets, and they have been so sturdy over this last year, making decisions, working with our finance team, making sure bills were paid, staff were cared for. You've entrusted them to lead the current board, the board that came off at the last annual meeting, and they have done so with humor and grace, because when you commit and you work together, it feels good. The congregation includes your minister, includes me, includes Ellen and Liz and Elizabeth Tong. We try to keep stirring those possibilities, to anticipate needs of the community, and then our job is partly to keep inviting others into the work. And there's so many ways that has happened this year when our volunteers have come forward with everything from tea time to soul matters, book reads, kayaking, so much more. We didn't know about those possibilities last year, but we know one another. So in a moment, the stewardship team is going to invite you to consider what it's going to take to keep UUFE strong and ready for the ideas of the future, for that human yearning for connection, for our needs for reassurance. The containers matter. Without a sturdy pot, there can be no soup. I do love the stone soup story, but I do think, and I hope for the sake of the stewardship team, we can skip past one part of that story. I hope we can skip past that early resistance and worry from the villagers as they come out after a long winter and they feel this need to hold back. It was as the villagers realized that they had food to share that joy emerged. Might that be the point in the story where we meet the stewardship team? That place of readiness for each member and family and friend to bring forth what they can, to do what feels good, to be a part of that sharing and to realize that what we can do alone is not the same as what we can do together. So as we are asked to sustain UUFE, may we be led by our spirits, held knowing that the warmth of spring is close and that this long time of isolation will wind down soon. May we preserve our flame. May we honor those who have come before, those who are here now, and those yet to come. So may it be so. And in a moment, you are going to see a slideshow. Gratitude to Liz and Ellen and many who helped us with it. These are just pictures from this past year, just this last year, and they are only a little bit of what happened in a year where we weren't even able to physically gather. And after the slideshow, you're going to hear from Jane, Mary, and Christina about what it is going to take to preserve the flame. And that will take less than 15 minutes. So we ask everybody to please stay for the full service. And at the very end, we'll have a postlude and the coffee. So your slideshow, and then you're going to go right to Jane Terebey.
Gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing. Oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You gotta paint when the Spirit says paint. You gotta paint when the Spirit says paint. When the Spirit says paint, you gotta paint. Oh Lord, you gotta paint when the Spirit says paint. 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 You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance. Oh Lord, you gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Okay, good morning. I'm Jane Terebey. I'm speaking for the stewardship team, Dick Doughty and Mary Dunlavey, and with great help from Rob Todd. It's very appropriate that the stewardship campaign is being kicked off in a month when our theme was commitment. We are asking for your financial commitment for the coming fiscal year that starts July 1st, 2021 and extends to June 30th, 2022. Our pledge goal for this year is $125,000, which is set by the Finance Committee. And this is the usual practice. They set the goal. And it is the same goal that we had last year. Unfortunately, we fell short last year. But if we meet this goal this year, the UU Fellowship will be in good financial shape. This year, we're also setting a participation goal. Last year, we had just 65 pledges. And this year, we hope to get at least 75 pledges. And keep this in mind, this is while we have 115 members in about 90 households, and we also have 30 friends. And each member and each friend will be receiving a personal letter, brochure, and the pledge form that we mailed out on Friday, and you should be getting it next week. And we hope that you can return this pledge form by March 31st, so then we can tweak the budget. And we hope that all of our members and our friends as well can make a commitment to help us preserve our flame. Financial gifts of all sizes will be greatly appreciated. After the pledges are sent in, they will be tallied by the Financial Secretary, Judy Harold, and kept confidential. The actual total will be then reviewed by the Finance Committee, and adjustments to the budget will be made as needed. And then our board approves the budget, and all of our members will vote to add it on our annual meeting. We'll offer a Zoom service in advance of the annual meeting to answer any questions on the budget if they arise. But if you have questions now, before you pledge, please contact any of the members of the Stewardship Committee, and our contact information is on the letter, email and telephone number. Now, this is important. We ask you to consider why should you give. First of all, it's because the fellowship is important to you. That's critical. But then second, your gifts are essential to the fellowship. Pledges are the major source of income for the fellowship. We are not supported financially by the UUA or the Central East region. Actually, we are obligated to send them funds, a predetermined percentage of our budget. All UU congregations must be self-supporting, and they rely on the generosity of all of us. The Stewardship Committee did want to gain some perspective on our congregation's finances compared to other congregations in the UUA. We compared ourselves with 130 UU congregations with 100 to 140 members in the year 2019, before the pandemic. We found that our average pledge of $927 per individual member was 18% below the average of $1,131 per individual member for these 130 congregations. Now, couples with 2 members think twice that number. We also looked at how our expenses compared with these other congregations. We found our operating expenses were about 31% average of the operating expenses for that group. So this data tells us that UUFE is not excessive in spending, while our pledging is on the low side. Next, the Finance and Stewardship Committee did a detailed study of our finances for the past 7 years, and Mary will share the results of that study. Go, Mary.
Good morning, everyone. Our aim today is to present you with information that will show just how critical your financial participation is to continuing our fellowship as we know it. We examined financial data from the last 7 years and put our findings into a graph to give us an easy perspective. And while I've lost you on my Mac Zoom, I do have you on my iPhone. So may I have the graph, please? You'll receive this information in the stewardship mailing that went out 2 days ago, but I'd like you to focus on a few main points. The blue column represents our income. You'll notice that only 3 times in 7 years have we met or exceeded our pledge goal. Your pledges and mine make up a little more than 85% of our income. The orange column represents other sources of income, which we generate, renting our building, fundraisers, year-end appeals. It's marginal income, but it's helpful, mostly dependent again on each of our generosity. When our income does not meet our expenses, Our finance committee and board make adjustments to keep our expenses as low as possible. However, these adjustments also limit how many special activities, classes, and events we can host, or how we reach out to potential members. Furthermore, limiting our expenses does not allow us to save for certain building maintenance and improvements we will need in the future. The black line at the top represents our expenses, which have remained fairly steady. And in this year of COVID, we're cut as much as possible to get us through the unknown. The national COLA for the past 7 years was 11.6. Our cost of living was well below that. But is generally trending upward with slowly rising vendor costs. Included in this year's expenses were small salary increases for our part-time staff. UUFE's staff, including our minister, as you know, are all part-time. Last year, the board did a comprehensive review of staff pay among UU congregations and recognized the need for a cost of living adjustment to provide staff with fair wages. We had not addressed this matter for many years. The board recognizes that to be true to our UU values of treating each other with dignity, fair wages are important, and they approve the pay increase congruent with other UU standards and other congregations. Retention of our staff is a top priority. Our standalone building and costs of property management, coupled with our personnel, make up the lion's share of our expenses. The board also believes that building a small rainy day fund for unexpected needs makes good, prudent financial sense. Next year, we think it prudent to add $2,000 to it. The fund is now at around $4,000. The good news of this year was the receipt of just over $16,000 from the Federal CARES Act, or the Payroll Protection Program, as it's called. That was $16,000 we didn't have to raise, and allowed us to reduce this year's overall pledge goal to a minimum of $106,000. The subsidy allowed us to retain staff throughout this very difficult period. We don't expect that $16,000 subsidy again. We have also welcomed a few new members, since virtual church has allowed us to reach out and connect with new people in the area interested in our fellowship. Won't it be wonderful to return to person gatherings, either on the lawn or later in the building, to meet old friends and meet new ones? We need your extraordinary giving this year to set us once again on a firm foundation. We need to meet this fiscal year's goal of $106,000 plus $19,000 to preserve our community and our flame throughout 2021-22. Our pledge goal for this year is therefore $125,000. We have 115 members and 30 friends. With all of us working together, we can and will preserve UUFE. Please call any of us anytime if you have questions or concerns. And now let's hear from our wonderful president, Christina Drazden.
Thank you, Mary. So why does all of this matter? Why does it matter if we retain our staff, if we have a called half-time minister, replace the roof in a few years, paint the walls this summer, continue weekly services as a congregation? Why do you think it matters to these people? A 19-year-old who was raised in a conservative religious faith is seeking a safe space to explore different belief systems. A 68-year-old coping with isolation during the pandemic while living alone with their children and grandchildren across the country. A couple prepares dinner to feed 12 people who found temporary housing at the local interfaith shelter in Easton. What about a 4-year-old who realizes that the gender labels assigned to them at birth don't feel right and seeks a safe, supportive space to simply express themselves? A family who enjoys the spring weather walking through Easton sees a statue in front of the courthouse honoring those who fought to defend slavery during the Civil War. Then they drive along Highway 50 and see the yellow signs on UUFE's property to move the monument. The family engages in a discussion about that cause and considers ordering a sign for their yard. A 38-year-old struggles to make sense out of our country, political leaders, public opinions, and seeks a place to safely discuss reflections about our troubling world. Or a 72-year-old with a rich life's worth of social justice work continues to seek ways to make positive change in our world. I suspect that you know different people who carry similar stories to these examples. And even if you just started joining our services a few months ago, you know that UUFE provides not only a sanctuary for these people, but we also fight for their dignity. We raise funds and provide volunteer hours to help maintain the local shelter and a number of other charitable projects in our community, including helping to fund college scholarships for minorities, feeding kids whose families struggle financially. We support each other on our life journeys, the losses, the celebrations. When there is gun violence at a Jewish synagogue or a Black church in this country, we UUers gather with others in our larger Midshore faith community in solidarity. Our power to do this important work is not as individuals, but rather as a congregation, a fellowship of people committed to our set of values. What about you yourself? Do you come to UUFE for your own spiritual growth? Do you value the friendship and loving support among our congregants and friends who gather together, whether on Zoom or in person? Do you rely on UU's commitment to fight for social justice and progressive change? Do you appreciate the open religious community as we explore different systems at Sunday services and in groups like Soul Matters? Do you value UUFE for how we engage with and support our local communities? If UUFE is that important, let us all come together to preserve its flame. Meeting the true needs of our fellowship will take extraordinary giving and generosity. Please remember what Jane shared, that at UUFE, our average pledge per individual member is $925, whereas at other UU congregations of comparable size, it is $1,125 per individual member. We know that not everyone can afford to pledge that amount. However, many of us could make that change. Clearly, a pledge is personal. It represents your commitment to our group as a congregation and what we want to build and preserve together. As you receive your stewardship letter in the mail this week, I encourage you to find an amount that feels right to you and will help our congregation reach our goal. That concludes our presentation to launch this spring stewardship campaign. As we start our coffee hour in a few minutes, we encourage you to share with each other what UUFE has meant for you personally and why you continue to be a part of our congregation. Thank you.
I want to just express my extreme gratitude to the team that put that presentation together. They rehearsed, they prepared, they've been thinking about the heart and soul of this congregation. Our theme is preserving the flame. We're actually not going to extinguish our chalice today. I will offer closing words. We've got a short postlude of music. But I encourage you this week, light a candle one night. Just reflect your experience of who you know because you joined this congregation, what you might have done differently this last year, who you may have helped this year as being a part of the community. So I close today. Sense our connection across these screens. Sense your gratitude for the congregation, and we close ready to commit to one another in love and to commit to those we don't yet know. We leave today with the flame burning, a reminder of the many ways we matter to one another and the greater community. Go in peace, go in love, go knowing love surrounds you wherever you may go. Blessings and have a wonderful week.
Gotta dance when the spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the spirit says dance. When the spirit says dance, you gotta dance. Oh Lord, you gotta dance when the spirit says dance. Spirit says dance. Spirit says dance.